So we should probably like say hi, people. You can turn your cameras on.
Yeah, you guys can turn your cameras on. Cami, Sarah, Yamna. Hello, Miss Yamna.
You know these people.
Yamna is my Zuzu's mom, the one in Egypt.
Zuzu's mom.
Zuzu's mom.
We're so happy to have you. We're so happy to have you all the way from Egypt. Boy, you must be getting up in the middle of the night. Hi, Sarah. Hi, Cami. We get to see people. Look at this. We're having like a party. A communication partner party. I love it. Who else? Jesse and Ashley. Show your faces, everybody. This is not that. What is that show where they dress up in costumes and they sing and you have to decide who they are? That one. I saw it once. I thought it was hysterical. I loved it. My husband was like, "That is the stupidest show I've ever seen." I'm like, "What? How could that be?" It wasn't stupid. Now, do I have time to watch a show every time it's on? I can never do that. I mean, I can never do that. We have to tape everything and look at it, and then I don't even look at it later. So that's how much TV I watch. I watch more news than anything. And that drives me crazy. So I'm trying to stay away from that. All right, it's 7. Let's get started. Let's get started.
All right, guys. I
always like to reward punctual people.
Yes, we should. All right. So I am Courtney, a Rett U coach, and this is, I'll let her introduce herself, our national treasure for Rett syndrome.
Hello. So hi, I'm Susan Norwell, and I am the co-founder of Rett University. And I am really happy to see all of you. And some of you I can't see, so we'd love to see all of you and have you undo your microphones or at least maybe stay muted until you want to say something, and then we can move on. So, yes. Courtney, you want to start? Or you want me to start?
I'll go ahead and start. So can everybody see my screen okay? Yeah? All right, good.
They're nodding.
It's all good. So what we're going to be talking about, of course, you guys know tonight, is what are communication partners. As Susan and I both know, communication partners are so vital for our kiddos, all of our kiddos. And I don't want to just say students and kids, all of our people who have complex needs. This is so important for them. It's imperative for their communication journey. So what is a communication partner? Anybody can be a communication partner. We all, not just the communication partner, but everybody who's involved in the child's life has a role in supporting their AAC. It is important. What we do counts, what we think, how we respond, all matters in the communication journey with the partners. Biggest, and I should have bolded this one. Communication partners wait, listen, and they respond. And they must use every one of their opportunities to grow the communication and language. I work with a young lady in Georgia who has an amazing communication partner. I got to train her, which was awesome. And her and the regular ed teacher work together, so she knows what she really needs to be focusing on when she's modeling with my client. She's modeling language on a constant basis, and I've watched this child's language grow because she's got somebody modeling that language. If one of our kids is just sitting in class and nobody's modeling for her what the teacher's doing, that's not helping her learn where her language is.
So I want y'all to think about kiddos who are deaf. So kids who are deaf are diagnosed the minute they're born as being deaf, and typically somebody's in there teaching the parents how to sign. Nobody questions whether they are smart enough to learn sign language, the child, or that the parents are smart enough to learn sign language. I'm not so sure I would be, but people have to do it. And nobody would ever say that child shouldn't have an interpreter with them. Somebody interpreting the world to them and building their language. And yet we run into situations. I have a situation in Virginia where it is against their rules to let somebody remote into a child's device so that they can't. Hold on just a minute. Bill, I'm giving a webinar and that ice is really loud. Thank you. Hey, I'm giving a webinar. I can't mute myself. The garage would be good. Let's pour a bag of ice in the refrigerator. Okay, so this is the beauty of Zoom. Okay, so they're saying it's against the law for somebody, it's against their rules for somebody to remote into a child's device so they can model on it. And I'm saying that's discrimination because you let a deaf student have their signing partner, but our kids can't have a communication partner. And I've been visiting my 49-year-old with Rett who lives in Scylla, and I did not see her until it warmed up enough that I could see her in the backyard because she's in the city of Chicago and I didn't really want to go into the city. And I will tell you, her use of the device, because she didn't have access to it because nobody knew how to use it in her house, diminished. What stayed, though, which I was excited to see, was her nonverbal communication, her ability to do yes, no, to look at a yes and no, to look to me for yes. All of that nonverbal communication, because I had trained the staff on that, hadn't had a chance to train them on her device, all of that stayed. And that's the encouraging thing to me, is that a 49-year-old who always had a device for a year and a half and then COVID hits, and who has rotating staff in the house, the things that the people are trained on and know how to do, that stuck. So it just shows the value of good communication partners. And I find the best communication partners are like people who don't know anything.
That was my one in Georgia. She's a mom who has a kiddo at the school who her son happened to be, and she was ready to learn. She was eager to learn. My best assistants when I was a teacher my two best assistants were people who had no idea what they were doing, and I was able to train them. And it was the best.
Drama students. I love drama students. They have great affect. They know how to think on the fly because they do improv, and they don't have preconceived notions. So lots of times the most professional people have these preconceived notions that stymie them instead of just going with the flow. And a communication partner's just got to, I'm training somebody remotely who's going to remote into a kid's device who's going to kindergarten. And she said, well, how do I do this? I said, you just talk with it. Just use it. Play with it. Don't be worried about what you're saying. Don't be worried about what they're saying, whether it's right or wrong. Just respond to it. And I think that's what makes a good communication partner. Nobody who's doing assessment should be a communication partner. I think assessment gets in the way of a good communication partner, because unless you're somebody like us who's been doing this for a million gajillion years and we can be a partner and be loosey and have, loosey-goosey and have fun and take data at the same time. But for the average aide, they should not. I always write into IEPs, they should not be taking data. They just need to be a partner. That's it. Just in tune to the kiddo and be a partner.
And understand that when you first start, when you're first introducing a communication partner, you're going to make mistakes. You're going to be, it's not going to be perfect. You're going to feel really ridiculous. I know, Susan will tell you when I started first grade, right? It was definitely an issue with me. Like I felt very, you feel very stuck and you got to kind of get out of that. So, some other things that make a good communication partner, the most important one right there at the top, presuming potential, meaning that you look at our loved ones with complex needs and presume that they have the potential to learn. It is not that we presume that they're going to go to Harvard. We don't presume that they're going to become, doctors or whatever. We don't know that. We don't know, but we have the potential to learn and to be able to be taught. That is the most important. That right there is, I think, the king of everything.
Because if you don't presume potential, then whatever you say, you're second guessing.
Yeah.
And nobody learns to communicate if they're second guessed. Speaking children would not learn to communicate if they were second guessed every minute. And somebody said, did they mean to say that? Did they really mean that? I don't know. Maybe that was just by accident. Those are things I've heard people say around my kiddos. They don't say it for long because they kind of see the steam coming out my ears. But the reality is, if that's their sense, is that everything has to be second guessed, that kiddos, we already have enough anxiety in Rett syndrome. We don't need to add to it. And using an eye gaze device is really hard. So I like to take doubters and stick them in a chair and say, here, you tell me I'm going to ask you a question. You try to answer it and see how hard it is. So don't ask questions. Just talk to them. Just talk.
So other things that are important with communication, being able to be flexible, being persistent, using consistency, using the device as much as possible across all settings, engaging and interacting, making it fun. We're, again, as Susan said, we're not just assessing them on this device. That is not what it is for. We're talking to them. Let them be snarky. I don't know about your girls, but my sister and many of my clients are snarky. They have that little tinge of, let me be a little bit mischievous when I'm talking, and enjoy that. Play it up. Have fun with that, because that gets them, I think that gets our girls going even more so. Making sure and boys, sorry.
And boys.
Okay. Yes, my boys are, my boy is also kind of snarky at times.
Very snarky.
Understand all their aspects of communications, understanding that there might be times where it is just better to use soft tech instead of high tech. Maybe you making sure you're watching their nonverbal. It might be a really apraxic seizure day where we need to follow what they're doing non-verbally rather than what we're, rather than having them get on their communication device, because it just might be too much for them. And most importantly, I should have put this one, I'm sorry, right underneath presuming potential. Make sure that you have respect for the person that you're working with and their device. That is their voice. So we need to be making sure that we're respectful of it.
And you know what? If you're looking at a school situation, one of the things I do recommend is sometimes you'll go into special ed classrooms do this all the time. It drives me a little berserk, but they say, we don't want her to get stuck on one aide, so we're going to rotate aides. She might have 4 or 5 people working with her. Wow, that's 1/5 the number of opportunities that aide's going to have to learn the device. How many hits is she going to have on that device, or he's going to have on that device to be an effective communication partner? Not enough. So my bottom line is, I don't want just one, because then they're out sick and now the kid's up left in a lurch. But how about a morning and an afternoon? Let's snug up the number of people in the beginning that are learning that device, because it's not easy. Now, we no longer, we don't recommend at Rett anybody use a language system that doesn't have a search function. So gone are the Sonoflex days, gone are just homemade communicator pages. You're going to use something like Grid, or you're going to use something like Snap Core that's got a search function, because that puts an aide or a communication partner just learning a system, or a parent for that matter learning a system, at an advantage. If they can spell, they can find a word, because it'll search it out for them. And I think that's really helpful, and it puts aides, what I find is it puts the support staff that's supporting our students more at ease, knowing that they can find things.
All right, Ms. Susan, do you want to talk about the research, or would you like me to?
I'll talk about the research.
Okay.
So what we need to know is that, I'm going to just summarize this because you can get the handouts, is that how much language kids hear before they ever talk is immense. And what we tend to do is we tend to think of it as we're going to give them this device and all of a sudden they're just going to start talking. But we have to kind of go back to the very beginning and realize that we've got to be mapping language onto those symbols. So we should be modeling, not even expecting any output in the beginning. And so we really need to be conscious of how much input is needed. But the research is really clear that Sam Sennett and these people right here, this AAC Modeling Intervention Research Review, they did a meta-analysis of what it is that makes kids successful in terms of their AAC devices. And they came down to one thing: modeling. Not fewer symbols, not the way it's organized, not hiding symbols so that they can, get to things easier, which is actually counterindicated for our kids because it makes the motor planning harder. But modeling from the get-go, and not having to model complete sentences all the time, but being able to model what is within that kiddo's ability. So if they're speaking in 2-word sentences, then you model 3. Okay. Then you take model 3. She needs to go up. then you model 3. If they're talking in one word, then you model 2. You just stay one word ahead of them, like you would if you were talking to a child who was learning language with verbally. So it's very important that we don't ignore the research in any IEP meeting that I go into. So I recently had an IEP meeting where the teacher said, well, I can't have that aid modeling. She's going to interrupt my instruction. Now, instead of coming across the table and strangling her, which is what I felt like doing, I presented them with this research and said, we are all incumbent upon reading and abiding by the research and what is best practice for children. And giving the research solve the problem without it being ugly. So I just think that these are the kinds of things you take into meetings, hoping that you educate people, because we are a rare group, a very rare group. Eye gaze is very rare. You might run into, and it's pretty common to run into speech therapists who have never seen an eye gaze device in their life and never seen a kiddo with Rett in their life, and only knows how to put on an IEP that they're going to learn WH questions. So really important that we give them these kinds of resources so they help we understand them, but also that they understand them.
All right. Anything else you want to add into that, Miss Susan?
I don't. It's really dense in terms of the research. I think it's really important to read. But what it really talks about is just that importance of modeling and what modeling can look like. Now, for those of you who want to look at modeling in action, on Rett University, we have something called the Rett University Book Club, Rett U Book Club. Oh, you can go to the next slide. That's perfect. What a segue. The Rett University Book Club is on YouTube, and it's on our Rett U site, and it's free. And on it, Courtney and I are reading books and modeling at the same time. So you can see us reading a book, and the book is so the child can see it. And we are reading on different language systems. So the people say, okay, I get I'm supposed to model, but what the heck is modeling supposed to look like? What am I supposed to do? What does it look like when I'm modeling and I'm reading a book? But we also have 3 courses on modeling, one on just modeling with soft tech and how to get started, mapping symbols onto boards, mapping meaning onto symbols. I have a little 18-month-old I'm working with, a little boy that has a developmental disability. It's unlikely he's going to develop much language, but what he needs is a way to communicate, because he's got ideas, he just has no way to communicate. And so we're starting mapping onto these very simple topic boards. And when parents are ready, I think it's more parents being ready in this case, when they're ready to decide to go a little more high tech, we'll probably get him on an iPad because he does have a point. But the other course is on how to start with a device, and then the course after that is how to expand once they use a device. But it's all geared short to modeling. But I think it's important sometimes to see. It's one thing to understand conceptually that it's important, but it's another thing to know what it looks like.
We're going to open it up for you guys to answer or ask any questions. We've got about 10 minutes left, but did want to let you guys know we, of course, have free lessons that we have been posting up at rettuniversity.org underneath our free COVID lessons. We have things on partner-assisted scan. We have things on some different websites and things of great, things to use. Some different lessons, even just on some basic stuff. Susan just did one on topics. They're on our Facebook page. We try to share them. I am in the process of cleaning up our link tree on Instagram, so that is a little bit more easy to find things as well. We've got our Rett U Club and, of course, our Rett U courses. If you guys have any questions or anything like that about communication partners, I am going to post, once we're done here, I am going to post the PowerPoint and probably a link to the article about communication partners and the research that's been done. So when you guys go into your meetings with schools, you've got that research available that you can hand to your schools. So any questions?
Comments?
Comments? Don't be shy.
We'd love to hear from you and see you wherever you are.
Hi.
I know you.
Oh my goodness.
Oh, wait a minute.
I totally I think I missed everything. I spaced.
It's okay. But you know what? I'm not
Yes.
putting this blurb in because you told me to, because I just noticed you. We have for years I have been using a yes/no board that looked like this, and I use it for everything. And the man who made it, mine is like 30 years old and looks like it's 30 years old. And the man went out of business, and we started looking for somebody to make them. And people in China would make them, but we had to pay them $150,000 in order to get it started. We're like, okay, yeah, like, well, we don't make that kind of money. And
That was insane.
Candace and her mom have started a little business making these boards. So I'm just letting you know, I use mine for everything. For yes/no, I use it for partner assisted scan. I use it for making words. I use it for, I can't even, I know. They're like amazing. And every time I walk into a building, I just ordered like 8 of them. I walk into a building, people go, how do I get that? I said, well, just pay me and you can take mine, and there you go. So it's better than people trying to steal mine, which is what they always did. My old one.
What's really funny is I actually, Evie, this is Evie's, and you see I still have the words I was making with her, but I have the prototype, so mine is like, it's like all messy.
It's okay.
Yeah, it's messy. So we've been selling them. That I haven't even taken one out for her yet. So it's just like, because we sell them usually about as quick as we get them. Oh, and we figured out how to get them to Australia.
Oh, good. Because I have a lot of people. So, anyways, questions, and if you want to know, we'll post how to get the boards on our website. I was going to say,
Candace, put your information of how they can get the boards in the chat, please, because we've had somebody ask. So if you can put the information in the chat.
Where's the chat?
Are you looking?
Oh, there's a lot of people on.
Yeah. Do you think using cards, high tech could work perfectly with Rett girls? I know Rett girls here in Egypt, but getting a Toby is impossible somehow. Okay, so I understand that it is difficult to get devices in certain places, and extremely expensive. But I do think that what you can do is you can look at a language system, and we could help. I mean, we could help you with that. Is look at one that comes in. If you're speaking English, it's pretty easy, but some of them come in lots of languages. But you might want to look at. I would recommend for soft tech. I would look at Grid 30, because I think Grid 30 gives you a good language system. And they have a soft tech version that you can print that's already part of their system. And you could use it because you could be modeling the language and using partner assisted scan. And I think that actually everybody should be using soft tech along with their high tech. Right. Because some days, the darn thing just doesn't turn on, or you're out of battery, or, I did a mission trip in Haiti. We had days we didn't have electricity. That was just how it was. But we always had our core word boards, and we were talking to those kids no matter what was going on. And so I just feel like it's harder when you can't get to that device, because I think you feel like that device is the it. And the device is important, don't get me wrong, but it's not the only it. The soft tech is really important.
And I was thinking about the fact, like when we first, when we moved to Florida and we brought Christy down to visit for Christmas, and like we didn't have a Toby or anything, like this was way back when, but she threw everything we gave her, like her Smurfs and everything, in the pool. And I could just imagine sitting by the pool with the Toby and with the mischievous grin on her face going, oh, here, let me throw it in the pool. So we don't, you don't want the Toby by the pool. So those soft tech options are great at that point as well.
Yeah, and I also think that, let me go back to my 47-year-old with Rett, Mindy, who is, who did well enough at her evaluation. I had enough video of her in my home where she was most comfortable that it was pretty much of a slam dunk to get her a device, which was great, especially going through Medicaid. I was really surprised at how well it went. But without consistent modeling, and that being new, that's what dropped out during COVID. But her soft tech way of communicating and using the yes/no I taught her, and using looking towards me for yes and away for no, those stayed with her. Now, do I think that that's better than? No, I think it's great when she can, of her own free will, go on the device and look at her stepfather who made sure she got to see me and say, I love you. I mean, all of us will remember that day like, it was the best day in the world. And that wouldn't have happened if I'm holding up a yes/no board, because I'd have to guess that was what she wanted to say. So I do think that cards, I would do something. I'll tell you, I met a woman, if y'all follow Angel Ava, Jen came to the Rett conference and I spoke there. I met her 2 weeks later. She drove down, her and her family drove down from Canada to see me with Ava. And they picked up a PCI Mini on the way because the export-import in Canada was horrible. They picked it up on the way once they hit America, and they brought a computer. And that computer didn't even have a touch screen. So they're modeling with a mouse. That made a huge difference because they had to jump through a lot of hoops. They had never given an eye gaze device in Canada to a girl with Rett syndrome. And by the time she was assessed with that computer, which is way cheaper than a Toby, and a PCI Mini, which is way cheaper than a Toby, they were able to get enough language in her using it well enough to then qualify for a device. So there's lots of ways to skin this cat without having to go to the biggest top-end deal. Yeah, no, you are very welcome.
We have a question in the chat of, do we partner-assisted scan each column-wise or right to left? I'm going to have you, she says, I do top to bottom, like in pod, is that okay? We want to.
Well, if you've already been doing top to bottom, and I will say, I have this thing about scanning left to right because that's the way we read. But if you look at most language systems, it's not going to work to go left to right. So if you look at, let's say grid 30, you've got 2 rows of pronouns, and then you've got your verbs, and then you've got your describing words. You're going to have to go through your pronouns first and then your verbs. So you're going to have to do top to bottom to make it make sense. Because of the way they're set up. I'm not going to change the setup because I'm doing partner-assisted scan. Does that help you, Preeti?
She says thanks.
Thanks. Okay, perfect. Great. Anybody else? Everybody's...
This is so fun.
Oh, I know. It is fun, isn't it?
So many people on.
I know. Except I'd like to see them, but see, here's what's if their house is like my house. My husband just tried to dump a whole bucket of ice into the refrigerator because our ice maker's broken while I'm doing a webinar. So if your house is like my house, you're on mute for a reason, and you might also be not without your camera for a reason too, because you could have children and animals and husbands with ice bags running in the house.
Or about 90 loaves of bread that you've been baking all day.
Well, there you go. At least if we could smell that, that'd be great.
Yeah, so
it smells like bananas and pumpkin.
We have another question. How do you get buy-in from the school for building literacy along peers with communication partner?
Oh man, you know what? It's so funny that you talk about that. So today I was doing a 1-hour training for a school district of a kiddo that I'm seeing that I actually saw years and years ago in Nebraska, but now I'm seeing again remotely. And I realized in an hour I couldn't get to everything. If I could just get to the communication partner idea and I could get to how to model on the device, I would be making some inroads. But I couldn't not mention literacy. And I showed them the video of her reading a book, of tracking the print and it lighting up and her talking about a book. And you know what? That teacher, when I mentioned, so she's got a resource teacher. So a resource teacher in a gen ed classroom. So the resource teacher is teaching your literacy. And at least a resource teacher knows how to teach reading. Most special ed teachers don't. I just got to tell you. I mean, I'm a special ed teacher. I didn't learn to teach reading until I became an inclusion specialist and was in classrooms where actually first grade teachers taught me how to teach reading. Anyway, so she said to me the most beautiful thing. I said, do you do decoding with her? She goes, no, how do you do decoding with a nonverbal kiddo? And I explained to her about making words and what it did. And she said, okay, I see it on the website. I'll order it. And then I'll do it with her. And I was like, that was the easiest sell I've ever done. But it is, Chrissy, it's not usually that easy. But here's the catch. IDEA is pretty clear that your daughter, your son has to have access to the general education curriculum. The research is very clear that you cannot be totally communicative unless you can write. And you cannot write unless you can read.
Yep.
Those are tied so closely together that it is worth fighting like a mama bear for. There are certain things that aren't worth the fight where I go, okay, fine. I'll give that one up. I don't give up communication. I don't give up a communication partner, and I do not give up learning to read and write. So I have this is one of my girls, okay? One of my girls, we're reading the story, The Other Side. It's a story about a town back in the Jim Crow days where there's a big fence running along the middle of it, and the black people live on one side and the white people on the other. And it's a story written for children, for them to understand what's going on in our history, but how we as people can affect change. I cannot tell you, she's in 8th grade, she wrote with her ABC flip book and using word prediction that the theme of the story was courage, and has gone through each picture deciding which page she wants to write about to explain why courage. So it was courage because they looked at each other downtown when black and white people weren't even supposed to look at each other. It was courage because they both sat up on this fence. They knew they couldn't cross it, but they sat up on this fence and developed a friendship. And then it was courage because they got off the fence together on the same side and played jump rope. She did all this with writing. There's no way she could have told me any of that with her device. But writing made the way. And so if we're committed to communication, what they have to be, schools cannot say that communication isn't a first goal for a child that's nonverbal. Then they have to buy into the literacy. And then have them call me. All right, my daughter is verbal with 8 to 10 words. She is typically with their school. She's doing virtual learning at this time. They're not.
I'm emailing, or Susan, I'm having her email me so that we can. Ashley just asked in the chat, guys. Her team is not accepting only verbal communication, which for a nonverbal student or a limited verbal, as I say, so that's not acceptable. My sister had no communication for 51 years. We trialed a Toby with her when she was 50, but you have to understand the nonverbal communication. You have to.
Actually, I find that to be abusive.
Yeah,
that's abusive treatment of your daughter, that they would not honor her nonverbal communication and make her say things. First of all, if they make her say things, it's not her ideas. And my guess is that she has an I-110. She has the one you have to plug into the wall. That thing's ancient. Is that the Toby she has?
Yeah, I think so.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. So I would say that A, she needs a better communication device, and B, that your school really needs some training. They really need to understand what communication is about. And I am so sorry, because I am so sorry. I'm so sorry. I can understand how hard that must be and how hard that must be on her. And maybe COVID is a good thing, because at least you're there to understand what she's saying and doesn't have to be dependent on an aid to do that. But we'll write you and give you some ideas.
Yes. Yeah,
Okay.
Actually, email me and we'll. So if you guys have any more questions, let us know. Susan and I are both available. My email is courtney@gp2c.org. You can email me for questions and also setting up consults. I'm the one who kind of does all that fun stuff. Or you can email Susan at Susan. I can't remember your. I'm sorry.
Susan Norwell, SUSANNORWELL @rett-u.org.
So.
And yeah, Courtney's she keeps my schedule because I can never keep it straight, and also sees kiddos, and we've been all over the world. We're like, where's Waldo?
Yes.
We're seeing kids all over the world at this point. But my heart really goes out to you, Ashley, because I can't even, I see this stuff all the time, but every time I see it, I just want to it just makes me so sad because I truly believe, and this is not just me trying to make parents feel better. It is not. When I first started my private practice, I had a young lady by the name of Marissa that was diagnosed with autism, and she was a mess. All she did was scream and cry. She was a mess. I had to put her in a bathtub in her swimsuit to get her to calm down. And I had symbols, magnetized symbols on the bathtub so that she could communicate, and she started to learn. I knew kids with autism could learn to read, so I taught her letters and her sounds. She had some sight words, and then she got the chicken pox and started learning afterwards. And she had Rett. And at the time, Rett syndrome said you couldn't get past 18 months. That was the skinny and the girls. And I said, oh, wait. I have somebody here who is learning to read. And she's 33 and fully literate. And that didn't happen because people believed she was cognitively impaired. That happened because we believed that she was perfectly capable of learning. And Ashley, your daughter's capable of learning, and anybody's daughters or sons that are here are capable of learning. And students, if there's anything we can do with help you with that, just let us know. But thank you so much for coming. We appreciate it.
And we'll be doing another one of these in about a month. If there's something that you guys are looking for in terms of web chats, please email me and let me know, because we are trying to make this, useful for you guys, so you guys have the information when you go into meetings. So let us know. Thank you guys for joining us tonight. And if you have any questions, let me know.
Oh, go ahead. Did you want to say something? I saw you go on.
Nope.
Come off mute. Oh, okay. All right. Bye-bye. Thank you.